Pika. Here's my first. So I have one huge issue with the movie.
Okay.
So there's a scene at the beginning where Tim has his stapler thingy pointed at Pikachu, right?
Yeah.
And then they make eye contact and they scream.
No.
Why did
Yes,
Pikachu
they do, don't
not?
they?
Why? Yeah. That bothered me so much because the next line Pikachu said, why didn't Pikachu say, meow? I didn't get it. I feel like it was a lot of.
Wait a second. Now hold on a darn minute.
I felt very confused. I felt like I couldn't relate to this cool cat like I could with Sonic. And Tim didn't look that much like James Marsden. So I'm like, I have to give this one out of 5 stars, just right off the bat.
I want to be the very best, like no one ever was.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Can It. Today we are going to be talking about that cute, that fuzzy, that yellow Ryan Reynolds, Detective Pikachu. I like that movie. Do you like that movie?
Do I like we're just going to give our final conclusions?
We're going to go through and explain what we liked, what we didn't like on the major subjects of the film.
So, Joe, let me ask you this. What were your first thoughts when you saw the trailer in the first couple minutes of the film? Like, the setup. What were you thinking?
Well, when I saw the trailer, I thought it could be anything. I thought this movie could be terrible, or it could actually turn out to be pretty okay. My opinions were almost immediately cemented that it was going to be a tolerable film in the first few minutes of the movie. It almost felt like a fan film at the beginning, and I have a serious soft spot for fan films.
Okay.
So in the first few minutes
I
of the movie,
definitely get the fan film aesthetic.
right? And I said, this kind of looks like somebody went and tried to do the series justice as a fan, rather than as just Hollywood pulling something out of their butt. Which is my most opinion with most movies nowadays.
I agree. I know I'd seen all the thing that got me the most excited, and pretty much my favorite thing in the movie was seeing the realistic Pokemon.
Yes, I think they look very good.
Yeah, that's obviously a huge part of the charm. And one of my favorite parts from the movie was just these I think it was at the beginning, was just these kind of landscapes of just Pokemon just being in the wild, and I was just like, I like this.
Right.
I said, this is good. I thought to myself, I was like, I would watch a documentary, like a Planet Earth style, with these Pokemon.
Right.
And, really enjoy that.
That is actually the same thing I kind of thought in a similar field. I was thinking, this feels like how you would expect this world to exist if it was a real world. Because whenever you're playing the games or watching the cartoons, you kind of get that vibe that, the Pokemon are the animals of this world. And then you see it, and you're like, dog, this is real. Dog, this is really cool. I like this.
It felt they did a great job of world building. Probably that was the biggest positive of the movie, was just the sheer amount of world building and all the little details all around that just kind of made you feel like this was a living, breathing world, which is kind of hard to do when half of the things on screen are CG animals.
I think it did the series some serious justice in that regard, because there were a lot of aspects that, of course, are completely far-fetched. And it nodded to those, and it said, this is crazy, this is weird. However, this is how the world works.
I like that they didn't have a scene where it was they almost did, but they didn't have a scene that said, this is a Pokemon. Pokemon are animals in the wild that possess special abilities. You win it, because, everyone knows Pokemon.
Right.
So, there was no part where it was oh, these are Pokemon, da-da-da-da-da. It was just yeah, you know what Pokemon are. Get over it, dude.
Yeah, I think it's actually really good. I think, and it would have been a funny joke had they done something like that. And I think they kind of referenced it almost with the way that it was describing the city that they came
Rhyme
to.
City.
And I thought it was really interesting, because it was kind of it kind of feels like at the beginning of the games or the anime, where they get that description of this is the world of da-da-da,
I will say, I didn't look at the cast beforehand, and when I saw Bill Nye,
yeah.
Initially when I saw Bill Nye, I was like, oh, this is going to be a good movie. I love Bill Nye. I did not expect to see him in a Pokemon movie. Every time he said Pokemon, a part of me died, but a part of me also lived.
Do you picture Davy Jones coming up? Pokemon.
I guess, what did you think of the story overall?
I personally thought it fit very well in the Pokemon universe. A lot of the things that they used and a lot of things they talked about are pre-established in at least the cartoon. They are things that have existed within the series universe. And I don't really know if there is a distinct Pokemon canon and Pokemon, like, not canon.
I think there is.
Because it's like there's the games and then there's the show. And, of course,
Apparently
all of
this
them
was-
take place in different time periods with different trainers and different generations.
Apparently this
of
was
Pokemon.
part of the animated series timeline from what I could find out.
Yeah.
Like this was Mewtwo like 20 years after the first Pokemon movie.
Right, and
that's what I read. I didn't look that up.
That is
but that's
exactly what I'm coming to the point. So even if it's not canon or whatnot, if it follows the animated series enough to where if you haven't seen it and you don't know about it, you can go into it and kind of assume some things and say, oh, okay, they explain enough, but they don't bog you down with information so that if you actually have seen the original material, you get a little extra from it. You get,
I don't
like
think
that.
I don't think it's a necessity to watch the animated series before because
it's
I
not.
don't know
It's
anything
definitely
about
not.
it. So and I know Red was there.
Supposedly. I saw it and I was
And-
like, when I went, okay.
No, that's
So,
who it was.
spoilers. I saw the first guy with the red hat, and I said, "Oh, it's a reference to Red." And then I see this Asian guy in the arena,
No,
and
that-
I'm like,
that was definitely
"There's
Red.
Red."
Yeah,
and I was
'cause
like,
he had,
"All right, cool."
I think he had Charizard and he had the starter Pokemon. But I thought the story it started off okay. I didn't like the story. I thought it was very confusing.
Okay.
And it kind of lost itself, and I was confused as a 21-year-old man. A kid, I feel like, would definitely be confused. Maybe I wasn't paying enough attention, but with all the twists at the end, there were like 4 twists, and I was just, it was bogging me down, and I just got lost.
See,
I was just
I
like, I'm going to
actually
enjoy
felt
the
the
ride.
reverse. All the twists that happened, I saw coming. As weird as that sounds. Once I was able to establish that it was in the Pokemon universe and that I could play by the same rules of the animated series in my head, I had already kind of figured out what was going to happen. And it did pile up at the end. I agree. I think a lot of things where it was kind of like, oh, we got to close the movie now. Okay, let's sum everything up in like 5 minutes. And once again, that plays perfectly well for a cartoon animated movie where it's with kids. But I do agree there was so much they were trying to wrap up in that time that it couldn't just be like an 80s cartoon where they're like, well, what have we learned today, kids? You know?
Well, they started off with Bill Nye's character. You go up and there's like these dark strings, and you're like, oh, this guy's for sure evil.
Yeah.
And then, fake out, he's actually a good guy.
Yeah, I saw that
And then,
coming.
fake out, again, he's actually a bad guy. And I was like, what is happening?
I think...
And then was the son a good guy? Was he a bad guy? Was he like a third party? I can't, because I remember thinking at a certain point, I think when they capture Mewtwo again after he like yeets Pikachu.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so the Bill Nye's a bad guy, the son's a bad guy, Mewtwo is also a bad guy, but they're all against each other. So there's like 3 parts, and there's the good guys. I was just like, there was way too much going on. I am completely lost.
Okay, so there's another thing that is once again a nod to the Pokemon the Mewtwo movie. In that movie, you are constantly questioning the morality of Mewtwo. You are constantly questioning what side he's on. And I think even for people who already know Mewtwo is this anti-hero character, they still questioned what side he was on. And I thought that was really clever because it's kind of like if you were to take the Zelda and Sheik situation. Well, now in Hyrule Warriors, when you put Zelda and Sheik in that game, you already know who's who, and it kind of ruins the illusion. As where when you're actually playing Ocarina of Time,
just because it's a nod to something doesn't mean it's good.
Now, well,
just
here's
it's
why.
Like,
here's
this
why
was
it
in
is
the
good
movie.
though, because let's say
got
you actually
confused.
know something about Pokemon here, and you know Mewtwo is supposed to be this really powerful creature that can talk and can actually delve with certain situations. You're going to be fearful of what side he's on. And they do establish how powerful he is in the movie, I believe. I felt they did a good enough job with that, by saying this thing is a force to be reckoned with. If it's not on your side, you're in trouble.
But to say you'll only get that if you've seen the animated series is a negative in and of itself, because
Well, no. I wasn't saying you would only get that if you see the animated series. I was saying you would benefit more from it if you did, because it is a nod back to that. It recreates a situation from the old films. Not so
Right,
that
well-
you would have to understand it, but even if you don't know that, you're still, okay, especially if you don't know that, you get the feeling of, oh my goodness, is this thing good or bad? If you have seen that, then even then, it still does it justice because it makes you think that again. It doesn't spoil anything. It doesn't be like, oh, I know he's going to be good in the end. It's like, no, it's like, this guy could literally kill anybody he wants at any point in time.
I was very confused, and I feel like they did a bad job. I don't care if it's a nod to an animated video.
Okay,
that
well,
I
let's
didn't
delve
see.
into this just a slightest bit deeper. So,
Yeah.
where does your argument lie specifically? Is it with Mewtwo? Is it with Bill
There
Nighy?
were too many characters, or too many bad people that were bad or they weren't bad, and then some of them were bad sometimes or they weren't, and I didn't know what was happening.
Really?
Because like there's the scene Mewtwo or Pikachu gets healed by Mewtwo.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "You have brought me the sun." And I'm like, "Uh-oh, Tim's dead." But then, so you're like, Mewtwo's a bad guy. But then he gets captured, and I'm like, okay, but is he a good guy now or a bad guy? And then like a second later, it says, oh, Bill Nighy's also a bad guy. So I said, okay, so is the son also a bad guy, but he hates the father, so he's a bad guy, but enemy of enemies, my friend? Is that what is happening?
See, even with all of that, I don't know why. And it wasn't because anybody who knows me knows I'm not a huge fan of Pokemon. I did not go and research before I watched this movie. My memory of the Mewtwo movie and of the 2000 and all those other movies is very faint. I was able to understand and expect all of the twists that were coming.
But also the son that kidnapped Mewtwo was... Also, the son that kidnapped Mewtwo wasn't even the son; it was Ditto.
And I thought
which
that was
added
clever
the-
because
No,
in
I thought that
every
was
shot,
fun.
where he was the bad guy, he had the sunglasses on, and I thought, you know what? That is good
But
consistency.
they also set him up. They set him up as a bad guy at the beginning when he wasn't wearing sunglasses.
They set him up as a jerk. He wasn't a bad guy. He was a jerk. And so
Well.
he had this moral ambiguity
Well.
where you didn't know if he was a good guy or not. He was just a jerk to this girl.
He was a jerk to his dad.
Yeah, but if he knew that his dad was evil, then it would make sense.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that's a bad twist in and of itself. I'm just saying that there's a lot going on.
Right. No, I understand that. There was a lot to take in, especially for a kid's film. That brings me to my second point. My biggest worry about this movie is that it was not going to be safe for kids, content-wise. I think it was perfectly safe for kids.
It was rated PG.
Yeah, it was perfectly safe for kids content-wide, excusing the one or two lines by Mr. Reynolds himself. But that's to be expected from that actor, and that's what they hired him on for.
It's PG. I mean, that's not really. If it's PG, it's safe for kids.
Right. Well, I
Unless
don't
you're-
I don't want my kids mimicking a lot of the lines that this thing said.
You don't have kids.
Well, not yet.
I thought the dialogue was some of the worst dialogue in any movie ever.
I thought that some of the dialogue was cheesy in a good way, but I felt that some of the dialogue was just lazy.
The scene where he meets the blonde girl who turns out wasn't
Oh,
Asian,
that was-
as I thought she
that
was
was so
initially.
awkward.
That was horrible, right?
Yeah, all those
she was
scenes
like,
were awkward.
She's like, I'm onto a big scoop here, and I need to interview you. And on the nose.
Yeah,
And I said, this is the worst.
What
dialogue.
it makes me think of is it makes me think of the kid shows. It makes me think of childlike.
But it shouldn't, because it's you have to think who the audience is.
Right.
It's not. The audience wasn't kids. I mean, it was
Yes,
kids.
it was, and it was
But
was
it was
even
also-
marketed towards
it
kids.
was also
if it was
20-year-old
marketed towards adults, it would not have been PG.
I disagree. If it wasn't marketed towards adults, they would not have brought Ryan Reynolds on. Ryan Reynolds is pretty much an exclusively adult actor.
The worst part about that is his kind of comedy speaks more to kids in their preteens and teens, especially
that's-
boys
right.
and males.
So not kids. With Ryan Reynolds, they were trying to swoop the 20 to 35-year-old market of men.
Intentionally, but they also knew underhandedly that we're
intentionally.
going to get a lot of little, edgy boys
Right.
who are going to go on to see this
but
movie.
they were trying to get in that. It wasn't just a kid. It wasn't a for kids movie like a.
It wasn't made by four
can't think
kids
of-
who also
I can't
dubbed
think of
Pokemon.
a kids movie. Yeah, no, they were trying to. I would argue that kids are not nearly as into Pokemon now as they were like 20 years ago when it first came out.
I'll agree
who
with
are
that.
all now
I think a lot of the people who are
30
still in the
years old.
series are the older people. Okay, then I will agree that it was most likely lazy dialogue writing, which is completely
No, it was horrible.
understandable. The problem that arises from that for me is because I was genuinely accepting it simply because I was expecting it to be a kid film. So in my mind, I'm still saying this isn't, just a child-only movie, but is a very child-friendly, go take your kid to watch this, introduce them to Pokemon, that way they can get into it like you did.
I hear that excuse a lot of like, oh, it's a kid's movie, don't worry about it. Like, it's still bad dialogue in and of itself.
I understand that. And, okay, I grew up with media that was both terrible and then the most clever thing I've even watched to this day. There was no in between. And so I'd be watching something like the really, really bad Christian kid show, where everything is
Bible Warriors?
something really just off.
You remember the one where they went back in time with Jesus, I think?
I think that was Superbook. But there's a lot of different ones. And I'm not going to diss all of them because it's a different demographic. But jumping back, that upsets me. That it was lazy dialogue, and it wasn't just passing it off for kids. Dang it.
Oh, jeez. Here we go. I know you can't understand me, but put down the stapler or I will electrocute you.
All right, so next point on the movie is stylization. So how do you feel this movie, to you specifically, Eric, stood out in a visual way?
I liked it a lot. I think I already mentioned the how good all the different Pokemon. I think I read there were somewhere between 50 and 60 different Pokemon, which relative to all 8 or 9 generations, not a ton. But each of them were so stylized. Like, it's not like they just imported a high-res model from the game. They really you can tell they put a lot of thought and care into how each of them looked. And honestly, I didn't even notice a lot of bad camera work because I was so taken by the way that the Pokemon looked and the backdrops and all this cool stuff.
I definitely agree with that in the sense of a lot of each character, they were, and I'm trying to think of how to word this, they looked like they did in the games, yet they were stylized in a realistic way enough that you could tell they were unique.
They were recognizable.
I wouldn't say realistic so much, because they didn't look super realistic, but they were stylized to the point where it was like, oh, okay, I can tell this is a reptile because he has kind of a reptile-looking flesh, and I can tell this is supposed to be like a little rat because he's got fur.
It was never to the point where they just had a blue turtle, and you're like, that's Squirtle. It was it looks just like Squirtle. Maybe there's a few liberties taken, but it's still 100% recognizably Squirtle.
Even though they just did, what was it, you said about 60 Pokemon they showed on screen?
Yeah.
I could easily visualize all of the other ones being put in place. Just giving them the right skin, giving them the right fur, giving them the right colors. Yeah.
It was also saturation was great. It was super, everything popped.
It was very
maybe
vibrant.
once they were outside, in the Torterra scene where they were giant and the ground was falling apart.
Yeah,
it's kind of washed out, but it doesn't.
The beginning
matter.
was a little washed out too, but that was also an external shot, and I don't know if that was a choice because in both of the external shots that were where a lot of time was spent outside, things seemed very dim.
That's true, and that could just be maybe they didn't think of that or. Just by comparison of Rhyme City, because that was pretty much, I would bet, mostly green or blue screen. So
a lot of it was probably CG.
They could really take liberties with how colorful they wanted it. So this movie, and we touched on this in the Sonic episode, it's had a lot of good response, just trailer wise, and I don't like to use the word, but it had a lot of hype surrounding it. Do you think it was met? Do you think it was appropriate, or do you think maybe some of the hype overshadowed it?
I would say it. I think it met expectations. Well, okay, my expectations.
Right. Well,
so my personal opinion, as a whole, I think I would hope it met expectations, but I wouldn't think that everybody's just as happy as I am with the finished product. Remember, I come from an experience where I'm not a huge Pokemon fan. I know of the series. I've worked with a few other people who played tons of the games and constantly would bring them up. I never got into it. Even so, I really enjoyed it, and when I first saw some of the trailers and a lot of the different things, I did have some hope, to not use the term hype, I'll say hope, that it was going to be really good for what it was. And that was a video game movie about Pokemon. I didn't expect it to be this box office breaker like in-game, is at the time of the release, or, other superhero movies out on the market and stuff. I expected it to kind of be in its own niche and for it to do really well for what it was.
I definitely thought when I first saw the trailer, and I still think it's such a weird movie to be adapted. Like, who's gonna, when you think of Pokemon, no one thinks of Detective Pikachu, that 3DS game, because it was their first on-screen live-action appearance of Pikachu. He has a Ryan Reynolds voice acting him, and so it was I have to applaud him for taking a chance like that.
Yeah,
and going.
Well, let me go ahead and say I think it's justified why they would go ahead and pick quote unquote Detective Pikachu as their first installment if they choose to do any more Pokemon movies, because I definitely think you can expand on this universe.
Oh, they have sequels in the works.
Okay,
I mean that means nothing, but that's what I've heard.
But because Detective Pikachu, in and of itself, creates a protagonist that is a Pokemon, but simultaneously can speak English without it being really, really weird. Because you can expect that. Because if you play the Detective Pikachu games, he speaks English. He talks and he's...
Yeah, but if you'd asked me before all this happened, what a Pokemon live-action movie would entail, I would say, Red's Journey, catching Pokemon, and you have Team Rocket, and you have May, and...
A summarized version of basically Indigo League,
Yeah, basically the TV show, the first season of the TV show, until he becomes the very best that no one ever was. And
hold on. I have one grievance that I want to point out.
Is it that the TV show was directly referenced?
That
and how does
Pikachu
that work?
starts singing the song.
It could exist in the world and be
the song could just exist in the world as kind of like a popular
so could
piece.
the cartoon.
So could the cartoon. Here's my issue. Why does Memory Lost Pikachu know this song? Why is he singing it when he's sad?
You don't forget it. I mean,
it's like riding a bicycle.
Whenever you bring amnesia into a story, it's like, where does it begin? Where does it end?
That's a valid.
They don't know
point.
their name, but they know. He knew Harry's apartment. He knew a bar to go to. He knew the names of all the Pokemon. It's picky for the sake of storytelling, but it's such a assumption at this point that it's gonna be picky that it's not even a problem for me, at least.
That makes sense. Well, and even in real life, there are factors where people who have amnesia will remember certain things, but not others.
Amnesia's weird, man. So, other than everything we've said, do you have anything you want to talk about the movie?
Yeah, to me, it was a bit of stretch, like you said earlier, that they would decide to go with Detective Pikachu first and foremost on this.
Do you think that's a negative?
I think that it's a little strange.
But do you think it would have hurt the movie more than if they'd gone with a standard?
Actually, I think it helps the movie. I think it just is a very weird introduction, because now if anybody dislikes this type, they're not going to give the other ones a chance. Just like, for example, if they tried to do an Indigo League style movie where they follow Ash and his adventure, then all of a sudden it's bad. Well, that sets the stage that everything after that's going to be bad. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's completely different. Yeah, it's a different story.
Exactly.
Ash's Pikachu can't talk to him in the way that Ryan Reynolds could talk to me.
Exactly.
To me directly.
Hello, Ryan Reynolds. Are you here on the podcast with us?
I can't do it. I'm not even going to attempt to do a Ryan Reynolds impression.
You don't have to do an impression. He's right there.
Oh, hey, Ryan. He just put his hand on my thigh. I liked the grittiness of Rhyme City. I remember it reminded me a lot of Blade Runner and these 80s movies.
Yeah, where it's I felt that vibe too.
Yeah, the underground, these high neon signs. There's fog and smoke everywhere, and you're this is kind of dodgy. And also, if any movie does this, I immediately like it. When they go to underground fighting rings or casinos or that kind of thing. For some reason I love that. And so
I think the premise for that was actually well accepted, because in the city Pokemon battles aren't supposed to exist. So it's the perfect place to have.
So not only did we get to go to one of my favorite settings in a movie, we got to see a Gengar versus who was
Blastoise.
Blastoise, that's right. Which just seeing that was like, oh, I watch a whole movie that's just Pokemon battles. That'd be
Right,
awesome.
especially with all those effects and the real-time animation. That would be fantastic.
My biggest thing is, like, I'm not the biggest Pokemon fan. I have never even touched the TV show.
Yeah.
Or the trading cards. I've tried to play the games.
Speaking of which, did you get your 2 little trading cards?
I did not. Was that part of the movie?
Yeah, you get a little pack of trading cards.
Oh, that's fun. I don't like the games too much. I think they're boring. Like, the stories are crap, and the graphics are boring, and the fighting is boring. And there's a lot of ways to spice it up, but they don't do it, and that's fine, because people clearly buy the hell out of them.
Formula, right?
Yeah, but it's not for me, and that's fine. But, like, in the beginning, like, 15, 20 minutes, seeing everyone with, like, a Pokemon bud, and, like, just going around, I was like, damn, I'd like that. Like, I'd like to live in Rhyme City. I want a Pokemon. Like, doing it in real life would be so much more fun.
Right.
And, like, I don't get that a whole lot. Maybe that's just the type of movies I like. Like, I watch these big blockbuster movies, like Marvel. It's like, I don't really want to live in here, because it's these exclusive superheroes, and, like, the person is kind of overthought. But seeing these just like people hanging out, it's like, I want a Snorlax bud. I want Machamp to direct my traffic.
I think that was a interesting choice with the movie. Is it showed that these creatures, while they are kind of harmful, they're not really going to do any damage unless they go over the edge or something, you know?
Yeah, there's a very, like...
In the beginning, when they introduce Cubone, and you're like, oh no, what the heck, he's running at him, and then he just hits him, you know, and it's like, that's all he was going to do.
Well, those are wild Pokemon, and the Rhyme City ones were more domestic, I
believe.
Of
course, but I'm saying, like, you don't have to be a superhero to live in that world. You don't have to have a power to resist the Pokemon. You just got to know when to be careful, like around real animals. And
probably my favorite moment in the movie was at the very beginning, with Tim. Was his name Tim?
Yeah.
At the very beginning with Tim's friend, and he said something like, "Yeah, all of us are leaving town." And I was like, "That's the Pokemon thing, because they're all leaving town." I was just like, "That's clever." And Tim's like, "I sell insurance," and I said, "All right, I don't like this guy." Anyway, I'm gonna ask for you to give me 2 ratings, Joseph.
Okie dokie.
And you can obviously explain both. Give me a blank out of 10 for this as a movie, just a movie, and then talk to me about how you see it as in the genre, in the collection of video game movies.
As just a movie, I would give it between a 6.5 to a 7 out of 10. I will say that I think as a movie, it was a simple movie. I enjoyed it for what it was. It was a fun go and watch it and laugh at it kind of movie. Not laugh at it because it's bad. You know, I genuinely was laughing at the jokes, laughing with the characters. I didn't get too emotionally invested, and for me, that's usually a plus, because if I get emotionally invested, I get sad, or I get angry, or whatever, and I hate that when it's something so simple. With this, I just felt like I was having a good time. As a video game movie, I definitely would give it a 9 out of 10, and I know that sounds really high for it, but I think it's a great introduction to Pokemon in the live action film series.
I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10 as a film.
Okay.
I don't like being hard on these kids' movies, so that's why I give it a 6.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. It's paced pretty well. It kind of falls apart on the last third of the movie. I felt, for my confusion, which apparently my adult brain didn't understand it. But there was a lot of positive. Like, story and acting was obviously a big negative, and that's a huge part of the movie.
Right.
But it also says something that it has a 6 when it has these fantastic visuals, the fantastic effects. And it made me, like, the world building was so good, and it made me want to be the very best and be a Pokemon boy.
Trainer.
Like I knew I can. No, that's not what I said. As a video game movie, I'm going to agree with you. It's a 9 out of 10. It's not overly cheesy like some of these.
Oh, and if I may tack on, why I rated it that also was it was loyal. It was faithful to the base material.
I was about to say, it doesn't add anything. It doesn't take away anything.
It doesn't do a lot that you wouldn't be able to see in the actual game or show.
Yeah, and I think part of that is like Pokemon as a franchise. It's like you don't fuck with Pokemon. Like
not at this point.
you can mess with Blood Rain, because, like, who plays Blood Rain? And it's like, they messed up my favorite game. But, like, Pokemon is such an institution, and that's not a bad thing, that's just how it is. So, yeah, it's a 9 out of 10. I think it did a good job, and I think it's gonna, I mentioned this in the Sonic episode, I think it's gonna kind of counteract how crappy that Sonic movie is. What do you think, Joseph? Can it, or leave it out of the trash?
Let's put this on a pedestal for now. It's out of the
Put it on a
dumpster.
pedestal. It's good. It's fun. Go see it. Well, unless tickets are expensive like where I live, they're like $13, then maybe don't see it, because that's a little, like, that's
Wait
Avengers
until it
Endgame
comes out on
money right there.
Netflix.
It might come out on Netflix.
It probably will.
Who knows?
Bye.
I know it's my destiny.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, just make sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more, just click that subscribe button and bell, so you'll be notified every time a new video gets uploaded. You can always check out our previous episodes and other shows on our channel page. Also, feel free to check out our website and regularly uploaded podcast, Pop Filter. Links in the description below. If you want to help us make more videos like this, you can support us on Patreon. Every little bit counts.